I can tell you right now, the culture of an organization is so important to protect, and it can take one or two people to ruin it.
All right, take two.
Okay.
So first of all, welcome to the podcast. But for those of you who are tuning in, I'm sitting here with Elle Roseby, who is the Managing Director of Country Road. And as I was saying before we cut off, we've also known each other for quite a while. So Elle worked with my mother, and I used to come into work as a little boy. And I was telling the story of about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I was walking through Creative Cubes, which is the co-working space that we used to work at. And I popped into Annie, who obviously is a mutual friend. She's my mother's best friend. And she had no idea who I was. And I'm like, Annie, it's me, Kyle. She goes, Kyle. And then obviously once she realized she made a big scene and dragged me over. And then that's when obviously we bumped into each other. But this is an episode that I've been really excited to do. Not only because your resume speaks for itself and you've been able to kind of go into brands around the country and transform them and have a massive impact, but also because, my mother talks extremely highly of you. As I was saying again before we cut off, the list of questions that I've got, there's 25 of them, so Mum, we might not get through them. There's a few little bit left of centre, but if you know my mum, that's
normal.
That's normal. But we might. I'll throw the mic over to you now, and I'll let you give everybody a bit of an introduction into who you are and your journey so far.
Yeah, thanks. 30 years, over 30 years in the retail industry. Mother of two, very happily married, started my career at 19. And we can go in prior to that if you like, but, started my career at 19 in the industry and with a company called Cherry Lane, which was a great, fast fashion, I'm going to say retailer at the time, and worked there for, just over, probably 12 months. And I just loved the environment. And I remember somebody saying to me, if you're really serious about your career, go to Myer. And so I went to Myer, took a downward kind of role just to get in. And I was, really fortunate to be progressed pretty rapidly throughout Myer. Started in men's jeans, then men's collections. Then I went into boys wear, girls wear, Miss Shop. So I had a really great progression through the organisation and all in different roles as well too, particularly around buying and planning. Got to a point there where I was in a pretty senior role and probably just questioned some of the decisions that were being made and felt that it was time for me then to go. And at that time, I was fortunate to get tapped on the shoulder by Sportsgirl. And so I went over to Sportsgirl as head of buying. And then Naomi Milgram bought the business and I ended up being her CEO. And that was over a 15-year period that I was at Sportsgirl for, which is when I saw you, Carl. You was a very young baby, you're a very young boy, and very different looking to now, and enjoyed my time there. I had a fantastic time, and then moved to the Cotton On Group to head up the Supre brand, which Nigel had purchased, and then after 5 years there, got an opportunity to lead an incredibly iconic brand, of course, which is Country Road, which is the role I have today.
Amazing. That is quite a CV.
Massive.
It's huge. Was there a point along the journey where it all started to click, or like a pivotal moment where you kind of said, you kind of found a confidence in yourself and said, I'm pretty capable?
I think there's a click and a confidence bit. I think the click for me, I'll be pretty honest, I went through school, I did pretty well through school, but I didn't really know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so I left school. I was supposed to be doing teaching. I went to university the first day and realised this is just not what I want to do. So I actually just worked. And I don't know why I didn't do another course, but I just decided I just wanted to work and just get a bit more experience out there in the workforce. So I tried a whole host of different jobs. But I always loved, I always loved clothing. I always loved putting clothing together. And then when this opportunity became available to go into Cherry Lane, the moment those doors opened and I sat down at my desk and I looked at everyone around me and we started talking about sales, and I went out to stores and I saw the stock and I saw the teams out in stores, I just knew I'd found my thing. I mean, I didn't even know I was working. I just love taking stuff home. I just always take work home. Like I was just always working. I can't remember not working. I can't remember during the week to do other things because I was just always so passionate about doing just working and doing a great job. And so I think for me, that was it. And even to this day, no matter what the pressures are, I just love what I do every single day.
That's such a key element to people who find success early, is finding that thing that you're so passionate about, because it doesn't feel like work, does it?
No. And it doesn't matter how hard it gets, and it does at times. It's your passion. I mean, I don't play sport outside, I don't do anything like that. So I think my whole thing that I love is the work that I do. And I genuinely believe that I actually love being around people. And I love seeing success, and I love trying new ideas and trying new things. And I think I've been really fortunate to have been in environments where I'm empowered to do that. And so that love of, and then of course, once I did that at Cherry Lane, then when somebody said to me, hey, if you really want to be serious, now go to Myer. And I think that transition then into Myer just then broadened my horizon. I went, wow. And I think for me, it didn't matter where I started. I mean, I went from Cherry Lane, which was this really cool, hip, kind of store, to being an allocator in the men's jeans department.
Myer obviously being one of the bigger retailers.
So I took a salary cut. And I took a title cut, so to speak. But back then, I was just like, I don't care. I just want to get into this organisation, and and it was never like I was ever looking at what the next role was going to be. I was just really focused on doing a really great job in the role that I was in.
It sounds like they gave you a lot of opportunities though within Myer to sort of branch out and try all these different things as well.
Yeah, I think when you really truly appreciate the job that you've got, and you're applying yourself, and you're there to support others. I was always saying, okay, is there anything else that I can do? I was always staying back. I was just...
Did you have much of a life outside of work?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was in my 20s. I certainly did, but I think it was just how you applied yourself, throughout the day, and I think very quickly you got a reputation.
Yeah.
If somebody needed something done, and you did it to the best of your ability, and you were genuinely nice.
Oh, it makes such a big difference, doesn't it?
Just being a nice person, and just being that person that other people can rely on. You just go, oh, she's going to get the job done. Let's just give it to her. And so I never complained. I never put my hand out for more. I never thought that I was bigger than my role. I just always just put my head down. And I honestly believe when you do that, it pays off, So I think that was really, it was an incredible time at Myer for me.
Did you have anyone mentoring you at that stage?
I look back at Myer, and there was some really pivotal supporters that I had. Mm-hmm. And then I went through a very difficult period there as well too. Yeah. Here was I, a very young woman. I was in my very early 20s. Just recently kind of getting into the business, and I was being identified and promoted pretty quickly. Now, that's a little unheard of, let alone you're a female and you're very young. Mm-hmm. So there was examples where my promotion couldn't be announced because of those situations.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, because I was so young and I'd been there only a very short time, and what did that really say about others? And funnily enough, even some of my worst critics were those women around me. Mm-hmm. that were, you know, I'm not going to say, you know, probably going, well, why is she getting it? No,
Jealous.
I'm not. And
Yeah.
I've been here for 5 years and she's been here for 5 minutes.
Office politics.
The office politics.
Yeah.
And I learnt so much, and that really hurt. You know, I was young, I'm going to say I was pretty naive, but to go through that at a very young age and to know what that feels like, I always promised myself that would never happen under my watch.
It's fantastic.
You know, I think I learnt from some of the best people and from some of the worst as to how I was going to form my leadership, what I was going to believe in, what I was going to drive as a leader in an organisation. But it was almost like I was keeping tabs. Yeah, that person brought out the best in me. And I did. There was Peter Cheer, you know, he was amazing. There was Joy Montalto. There was just a gamut of people that were really supportive, and and when you've got somebody that supports you, I mean, really supports you, and they're quite obvious about that support, it gives you so much more confidence.
So
and
true.
you know that they've always got your back. And that was such an early learning for me around, wow, if I hadn't have had that support, would I have turned out the person that I am today? Because so much of that, when you're just starting off in a role, you know, all of that forms who you are and your opinions as you get a bit older. So I think it was a very telling time for me there.
Do you think they recognise those qualities in you and that's why they gave you that support environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, they always knew that there would be, you know, that I'd go further. And I think that's why I was one of the youngest buyers there, you know. I would say they did up until a point. And then, you know, sometimes culture changes as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when you've got to go, okay, maybe it's time for me to, you know, to do something different now.
Were you motivated yourself as well? Were you motivated to continually progress up the ranks?
I think my parents, I think the way I was brought up in life, I'm going to say I was indulged as a child, but then I said to Mum when I turned 12 that I no longer wanted to wear Target, I wanted to wear Jag, and she just looked at me and said, well, great, go and get a job. And so I think that work ethic, so I started at 13, you know, in the veterinary clinic, and then I worked for McDonald's. And so if I wanted anything in my life, and still true to this day, and so at 13 years of age, I had to be self-sufficient. Yes, Mum and Dad put a house over my head and they did all those very kind, but if I wanted to buy something, I had to, my car, you know, a holiday, anything, anything at all, that's what I then had to do. I had to be very self-sufficient, had to pay rent. So I think that they taught me great discipline, and then I had to be self-sufficient. I knew that they were always there in the background, but they knew that that's what I needed as well too. So,
do you think that played a role in why you were, I guess, so successful so early as well?
Yeah, I think that when you go through my reports, you'll always see that I was fairly driven, but I think maybe Mum and Dad could see that, and they knew that I was, and they just kind of pushed me that next stage, Carl. But yeah, I would say, and my father, he had his own business, and so he would always say to me, you know, be loyal. He was always about loyalty. You know, the rolling stone gathers no moss. That's what, you know what he said. And so if you look at my resume, you'll see that I've been at places for a long time. And that's not necessarily about loyalty, but it was about the fact that I really enjoyed the environment, and I just wanted to always apply myself in that environment, to the point where then the environment maybe didn't serve me. But I do believe that my parents are absolutely fundamental in my outlook and my drive. We never talk about my work. We never talk about success. When I come home, I'm just me. You know, like it's not what has defined me, but it certainly helped me along the way.
There's a lot of humility there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Obviously, as you progressed in your career, you started to work into, I guess, some higher pressure roles. I'm quite interested to hear about how you dealt with those. Obviously, when you first started to kind of step up the ladder. What were some of your biggest lessons kind of taking those roles? And how did you deal with some of those pressures that came with them?
I think the biggest transition is kind of from doing to being. So, when I look at Myer, I was very much around doing the role. And even in Sportsgirl, it was the same. And then all of a sudden you're becoming a leader. So you're kind of moving from managing one person to 2 to 3 to 4. Then all of a sudden you're managing an organisation. And I think the greatest transition for me was in managing an organisation, leading and no longer doing. So my days were, if I had completed everything and, I'd signed off things, that was my day. But now all of a sudden I'm having to manage very complex people and situations and setting a tone and culture and level of expectation. And I think that was probably the biggest transition for me, from kind of managing, and doing, to really leading a business, leading a strategy, leading a vision, leading a culture, leading a way of being and believing, and really holding true to that. I think that has been the most difficult transition. And so and there comes a whole host of stresses, and issues that arise every single day that will test you and will test your boundaries and will test your belief system. And so that's where I've had to have the greatest support around me as I've been leading these big organisations and lots of teams and lots of people. That's where I really started my journey on reading and podcasts and also making sure that I've got a really strong leadership coach around me, which is why I saw you at Creative Cubes, with my leadership coach. Because to lead others, I must lead self, and I must be so disciplined in self-leadership. I need to understand myself to lead others.
So that's something you're continually working on?
Always. I am a work in progress, because as I think, well, my opinion, you get triggered by things, by situations, conversations. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in your head sometimes, lots of voices and noise that goes on in your head. What do you do with that? And so how do you decipher that noise? And so it's really important for me to be able to sit down with someone in a really, safe environment to go, I'm really feeling this, I feel like I'm giving this, or I'm doing this and I'm just not getting it back, or I'm just not making any progress here with this situation. Maybe we need to reframe the situation, and maybe I need to reframe myself and my way of thinking. So I think that's the challenges that I'm probably facing with my leadership coach, just how and so I think and then you hit a new realm of being, and then you find this new space where you go, wow, this is a really nice space to be in leadership. And then something else comes your way and you're like, okay, here's another set of really difficult circumstances. How am I going to navigate that space? Can I just have a bit of a safe place to talk about this, and then let's take it to the next level?
Yeah, wow.
So that's probably
I suppose that's something you've been focusing on a lot over the last 12 months then as well.
I would probably say I've been doing more work on myself now for the past probably 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah, probably a good 8 years.
So was that something you recognised within yourself that you may have been lacking, or was it maybe someone else sort of gave you the advice to potentially seek some improvement in that regard? Or
when I was with the Cotton On Group, they're very much, Nigel and the team are very much around, personal leadership.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I really enjoyed working for that organisation. And they really live by that. And that's when I first experienced a leadership coach. And it was really deep work when you first start. She was just mentioning a few things, and it was almost like somebody was just turning the light on in my head, where I was just like, wow, what is this person talking about? And why is it resonating so deeply with me? And what does this actually mean about me? I mean, why is that affecting me so much? And so it was that moment that I went, I really need to understand myself more, because I know that if I can really understand myself more, then I know I can untap potential in myself. And so that's why it was at that moment. And it was Karen again, I remember so vividly. She said a couple of things one day and I was like, wow, oof. And I went to her straight away and I said, you just said that and that really resonated with me and I need to understand why, what's going on with me. And I think before then I could have been a bit asleep.
Yeah.
You know?
So
Or
easy to do.
Yeah, or I just wasn't open, or or maybe I didn't have the right inputs around me. But when when I met her, I thought, okay, I'm on this journey now. So, and I still am, and so is my leadership team now.
So can you elaborate on some of the exercises perhaps that you have to constantly be working on in order to improve those skills?
Oh, a simple one is leaning in. So a simple one might be everybody, so you work with a very senior team, and you give. Yeah, you give your time, you give your opinion, you give your thoughts, you give a lot, and sometimes you don't get back.
Yeah, it's very selfless, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're like, hang on a minute, I feel like I'm giving a lot here, and how come I'm not getting any back?
Yeah.
So do you actually respect me? Do you not respect me? Do you like me? Do you not like me? How come I feel like I'm really leaning over to you and helping you and being there for you, and you're not giving me anything? And so what story does that create? Well, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they think they're better than what I am. Yep. Maybe I what I've got to say isn't meaningful. And so all of a sudden you start creating stories in your head. And so I that was something I had to unpack one day, actually for a while. I really wanted to understand why I needed to do that. And so, after a period of time, what I realized is that I just need to sit in my space and I need to fill my space. Yeah. And not let others impact my space. Yeah. And so when I'm sitting in my space, I'm powerful. When I'm leaning in too much, yeah, I'm giving away. And when I'm talking about power, I'm actually not talking about it. I'm actually talking about my belief. I'm talking about who I am, yeah, and not worrying about the stories that are being created in my mind, but actually sitting in true to who I am. Yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful.
And you might not be leaning into me, and I'm actually okay with that because you've got your stuff going on, and I'm not listening to that stuff, and I'm not going to participate in it, and I am not going to make that something that impacts me.
Yeah, because it can be an energy drainer, can't
Oh
it?
my gosh, it's an energy drainer. You think too much about it. It puts you into a negative thought pattern, and you start worrying about yourself. And in actual fact, it's got nothing to do with you. Yeah, but how do you sit in your space?
How do you deal with that from a performance standpoint then? So, that's obviously about the relationship, or maybe it has some connection to performance, but if somebody's not leaning in and kind of giving that energy back, and we're kind of talking about how, just filling my cup, making sure that, I'm filling my space and having that belief, from a leadership perspective, how do we manage that with the performance of the individual, or, some of those tougher conversations when performance might not be as high? I'm really interested in, I guess, leadership, right? And what are the characteristics of a leader? How do they deal with certain situations? What do they really aspire to be? And what kind of legacy are they trying to leave behind? So I know for me as a business owner, and I'm sure you experience this as well, is that dichotomy of trying to be the best you possibly can for someone, but also knowing how to have those tougher conversations, I guess, around performance, or how do you manage those situations?
I think there's parts of that, Carl. So, for example, when you don't have those team members, or when you don't have those team members as part of your leadership team, and you might be sitting on a team with those types of team members, all you can do is sit in your space and be true to who you are, and don't change. Yeah, don't try and read the play for somebody else, or then try and change your play. Just stay with where you are. So you're at a very senior leadership table where they're not reporting into you. You've got to really just sit there and own it and be true to who you are and believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Yep. If they're reporting into you, I think then that's a very different scenario. So if they're actually reporting into you, for us, it's about our values as a business, and it's also about the mantras of what we believe in as an organisation as well too. And if I'm finding that they're not giving, then it's a pretty easy conversation, because it's a really authentic one around, hey, what's going on for you? Are you okay?
Yeah.
What's going on? I've noticed this. Do you know this? Do you know that this is how you're showing up? Have you got any idea about that? Do you know? And most of the time, somebody will say, I've got no idea. Okay, well, maybe just have a bit of a think about how that's showing up for others. Yep. And I want you to think about whether that's something you'd want to change. Do you want to change that within yourself? Because no use me telling you what to do unless you do truly want to change. And so 9 times out of 10, the person will come back and go, you know what, I really do. This is something that I do want to change. And so, and then we go, okay, fine. So we're going to work together on this, and this is what it's going to look like, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to continue to go on this journey together. I think that when you then try and have that conversation, and clearly there's there's a lack of response to that, I start to get very worried about that person. Because what's then happening, because to me then they're not living the values of the organisation, of the mantras, so then what's happening with that individual and the impact that they're having on the team? So I would then say, maybe we've got a wrong hire here culturally. And then how are we going to work with you to address those issues? Because now they're going to get pretty serious. Yeah, because they'll show up. So I would say that, having the values, what you believe in as a leader, seeing it shown up. And I can tell you right now, the culture of an organisation is so important to protect. And it can take 1 or 2 people to ruin it. And they're the ones that we have to be mindful of and really address those performance issues.
And that's obviously why it's so important as a leader to be able to have that belief and be able to be strong in those moments.
Absolutely. But they're your testing moments, because all the rest is just words on a wall. Yeah. And that's why I think culture goes unchecked, because it's hard. It's really hard to keep it in check, because there are just moments where you really do need to pull people up, and you really need to have tough conversations with them, really tough conversations. And these are conversations that have been unkept for, probably 10 years, 15 years. But you've got to have the conversation, and they're deep conversations, because something has happened to that person that's made them that way.
What were your initial expectations when you came into Country Road? Was there any culture changes that you had to make? And
Yes.
There was?
Yeah. So, it's an incredible brand of 50 years. And I knew coming into the brand that, because I've been around for some time, that there were people already in the organisation that knew me. Yet, so some teams would have known me because, they would have worked for me in the past, whereas my leadership team didn't really know me because they wouldn't have worked with me previously.
Yep.
And so I was very conscious of that probably there are teams talking about me, but the leadership team have no idea who I am. So I made sure that I caught up with the leadership team before I started.
Okay, that's good.
And, and had a coffee and I just asked them 3 questions, One of them was, talk to me about the culture. Tell me what the culture is. What do you want to retain with the culture of the business, and what do you want to change, and what do you want it to be? And so there were some issues there that we needed to address. And, we had about a 30% turnover in that first year in the office, and that's okay. But I think that I was pretty fair with the way I approached it, in hindsight. Just made sure that I got everybody together and just, said that there's a bus. And it's going, and it's your decision to be on it or not. But this is the bus. This is where it's going. This is what it's going to do. And I'd love you all to be on it, but it's up to you whether you want to be on it or not.
What do you think are some of the pillars of having a strong culture within your organisation?
It's Some of the pillars. I think, first of all, what you've got to have is is the senior leadership team. It's almost like there should be no values written on a wall or mantras, because the behaviours of the senior leadership team are so obvious that is the values of the organisation. So I think one of the key pillars are the leaders of the organisation truly leading with heart? Are they truly leading a visionary, driven business? Are they truly empathetic? Are they truly supporting their teams? Are they engaging with their teams? Are they really there for the team's performance? Yep. So I think that the leadership team themselves are held to high account. And I think that's where it starts. I think underneath that is the conversations that we're having, the care that we show, the opportunities that are provided for the teams, and allowing the space for them to be great.
Because that then reflects on the customer too. It's got to start with your own stuff, in my opinion, because then that will trickle down to the customer.
I also think it's one of the hardest things to do as a leader, right? I think giving someone the opportunity without, trying to fix it or kind of going too far, and because everybody has confidence in their own ability once they've experienced some type of progress. And you want that, sometimes you want that so much for someone else, but they, like you mentioned before, they have to want that for themselves, and they kind of want to have to fill their own cup and want to make that progress. But then also as a leader, being able to allow them those opportunities and to grow and to learn from.
But you've got to recognize where they probably are lacking in skill, and so that you highlight that and then teach them those necessary skills as well.
Well, we should be on the job coaching all the time.
Yeah.
So we have a mantra, and that is, that we leave the logo in a better place. That's our mantra. And so when you think about leaving the logo in a better place, it's a 50-year-old brand. It has to be around for another 150 years. The only way you're going to do that is through having the best people in your business. The only way we're going to do that is through succession planning. So the team members in our business should know what their next role is in the organisation. And if we have to recruit from outside the organisation, particularly in our retail business through, when there's a store manager vacancy, area manager, state manager, then if we have to go outside, then we've failed, because that should be a succession planning model that we always have in our business. So I think that when you talk about the pillars, I think really as a team member, when people are really clear that this organisation, I'm really clear on its direction, the leaders of this organisation truly live the values and are inspirational, and I want to be like them one day. And I feel appreciated, respected, and I'm rewarded and recognised in the way that I actually do my job. And I think that that's the role that we do. It's a big job. it's a norm, but and that we care. When there have been really tough times like they're having COVID, we decided that we wanted to take the approach. We wanted to lead with heart. We got together as a leadership team. We said, we don't know what this is going to look like. It's going to get very difficult to navigate. How do we lead with heart? How do we need to lead very differently in these really uncertain times?
So many questions, obviously, in the retail space at the moment, with the adoption of e-commerce and everything like that. Where do you see Country Road heading in the future, and what are you putting in place now in order to steer the ship?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate that we do have a very solid online business.
I suppose that helps by having a solid brand as well.
Yeah, well, and also the right level of investment, over the years as well. So that's already pretty solid. I think for us, what we really want to make sure is, we're doing a big piece of work at the moment around the customer and what are those journeys that are really important for the customer? How do I shop? How do I use my mobile? versus going in store, click and collect, any personalization, gift giving. So we always, the piece of work right now is really putting the customer at the core of those decisions. How do they journey through our business? And then what does that mean for us as an organization that we need to address, fix, invest in? But online is very important. But 80% of our customers want to shop in store.
Yeah.
So we know that the store environment is absolutely critical to the success of our business. We actually have opened and invested in about 12 stores during the COVID period. So we have, every intention on growing our store portfolio and therefore investing in retail as we do with online.
We've sort of... You've adopted kind of what Apple has done, where you've made the store really nice and clean and crisp and just a nice environment to be in. And then also you always have friendly staff. I want to ask you a hard question in regards to Myer. You've obviously come a long way since those days. What do you think they're lacking, or what do you think that they need to improve on? Because obviously the last 10 years or so has been a very, very difficult time for them.
I think that they've changed their model, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that Myer have, looked at where they can win in the marketplace, and you can see that they're going after that millennial customer. And that's a pretty brave, big move, for Myer to do that, which has been very much a very traditional department store.
Yeah.
It's been very much around the mums and the dads and the rinse, the blue rinse set going into Myer. And so they've really changed their product mix. And so they've found their niche. And that's going to take them some time to develop that and invest in that as well too. But they've got a very strong online business, and I think that that's their strategy that they've decided to run with, and I think they're executing it better today than what they've done historically. So I think that they've I think that that's if that's what's right for them, I think that they're doing a really good job in
It'd be
that
a
regard.
tough executive team to be in, I think, that one.
Oh, do you want to know something? I think it's tough for everyone.
Yeah.
Because you have to innovate, and then there's capital investment that's required to innovate, and you're just on this constant journey, and then you're having to navigate COVID and closures and lockdowns and retail teams that have had to be stood down. It's really hard, and for some of us, and Myer included, they've got a portfolio that's old, that's really aged old stores that's never been invested in. So, it's a culmination of years. I mean, 20 probably years of decisions, which is today's, is what
Was
you're
that
seeing
succession
today.
planning as well? I suppose that could be somewhere where they lacked because they didn't have those transitions in place, and then they just sort of missed out on the investment, as you said, in the stores and then also on the online initially.
Yeah.
And then it's obviously been hard to compete with those players that got into the market really early.
Well, specialty retailing, when you look at a traditional department store, which is what, I was in, 30 years ago, you didn't have specialty retailing. And the last part of specialty retailing, the last part of the business from department stores, which they owned and won in, which was beauty, is now in specialty, with the likes of Mecca, which is likes of Sephora, et cetera, et cetera. So, these big chunks of very traditional, areas of retail for these departments.
Cornerstones,
the core business of these department stores, which maybe they didn't innovate or they didn't move forward or something like that. You think about it, every part, menswear, children's wear, all of that's been specialised. There's lots of menswear, stores. There's lots of women's wear. There's luggage. There's kids wear. There's pharmacy. There's everything, and of course, so. Beauty was the last to go of that. So I think it's tough, I'm
going to shift gears a little bit now. I'm actually more interested now outside of work, right? So what kind of legacy do you want to leave on the world? And what are you most passionate about outside of work?
That's it's funny Carl, I don't see myself outside of work. I see myself as a whole person.
Yeah.
And this whole person goes to work, and this whole person is a mother, you know, a wife, a friend, a daughter, a sister. And so I think more importantly, it's who I am as a person. You know, I always hope to be a very loyal, committed, you know, honest, caring person. Now, whether that be in business or in my personal life, I think just being very true and core to who you are and what you believe in. And then it doesn't matter, you know, whether that be outside, it doesn't actually change.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm uncomplex like that. I think, you know, that I just always want to be that really good person that you would always know where you stood with me. And if you ever had a problem, you know that you could rely on me. And that would be in business. If you worked for me, you would know that I've always got you. You know that you could always come and speak to me. Yeah, that it's okay. And so I think that that's probably more important to me than anything else. And then who I am as a mother, you know, to two lovely daughters is important to me.
Is there anything, I guess, at the moment on a global scale, like, you know, that you really believe in, that you're really trying to incorporate into what you do, your day to day, and these kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first of all, the journey and the drive that we have as a business around, you know, really sustainable fashion, really thinking through where we're getting our fibres from, who are we partnering with from a fibre perspective, what does that look like through the supply chain? So I can absolutely guarantee that I know where those fibres are coming from the moment that it is spun, dyed, put into garments, and then I'm selling it to you. I absolutely know the transparency of that, and I absolutely know that nobody's been injured, everybody's been cared for in that supply chain, and everybody's been given the fair way, you know, the right wage, and that we're looking after the community. So really to make sure that we're not hurting anyone in the process, that, you know, it's a kind process, right to the point of then what are we doing with those garments at end of life? Yeah. So as soon as you're finished with that, what are we doing? So very, very passionate with that, you know, and you'll see that in the biodiversity project that we've just launched with our heritage sweat. So really pushing that more so. I think the other part for me, and being transparent with that, being really upfront and honest to say, we know where this comes from, but we don't know where this comes from, but we're really trying to find out where this part is, and we're going to make sure that we do get there, and we're going to throw everything we possibly can at it. So I think being really inquisitive and driven in sustainability and transparency is critical. I think where we stand on diversity, inclusion, ethical behaviour is critical. What are the issues that our teams go through today? You know, how can we behave differently as an organisation? What would our teams like us to see, what would our teams like us to do or be? What issues would they like us to address? Where are we excluding? Do we have fair wage across the different sexes? So, you know, I think that that's really important for us too. So, yeah, I definitely say sustainability, transparency, ethics, diversity, inclusion, and just showing up well. You know, just knowing that when you go to bed each night that you are doing the right thing.
Represent the values.
That we're absolutely representing the values, and that it's okay if there's some ugly stuff, but let's actually just know it and let's really work on it to make sure that we are throwing everything we possibly can at it, and we're having the conversation, and we're just doing the right thing.
That's definitely something. It's I mean, we've had a few conversations around this now, but I mean, the equality and the equal opportunity, it's something that's came up a few times now. So it's actually why we're doing this, you know. We're dedicating a whole month to women. We didn't have too many women on the podcast initially, and not just because we weren't aware. So as soon as we could become aware and create awareness around it, you know, we want to be a part of the solution as well. And I think that's the mindset, you know. It's amazing to hear that, and that it's especially, you know, as a leader of such a large company as well.
I mean, we're undertaking a reconciliation plan, of course, And that's been a really interesting process for us as well too. And that's where we've been using, Yatu, Wilders Hunt, actually helping us, develop our reconciliation plan and really trying to understand, our First Nations perspective on our history. So I think that in leadership and in business today, you have far much more accountability and responsibility. And that is so exciting to think that it's actually about business making change. We always wait for government, but it's actually about us. We're actually the movement. We're the ones that are the change makers. We're the ones that can run, and we can be agile and nimble, and we can make change. And I think that that's what our responsibility should be.
Yeah. It's important to just continually ask those questions. It sounds like you are asking those questions all the time, and so they're always at the forefront of your mind. And it just makes it so much easier to be making those shifts.
And I think that when you create an environment where it's okay if we're not there, it's okay that we're not there, and it's okay if we made a mistake here, but actually let's just move on from that, and actually let's really just have the right intent here, and what do we need to do or change. And I think that creating that conversation and that openness is really important to have, where people don't feel like they need to hide things or, just talk about it. I think that, that's what we're trying to create.
Amazing. So to finish off the podcast, we've actually got a bit of a segment that we've just brought in. We don't have a name for it yet, but it's quite similar to Quickfire. So we're going to put some questions up on the TV.
Oh, no.
And it's basically, we say a minute, but, take as long as you want, really. And, you can answer those questions as best you can.
Okay.
All right.
One piece of advice for women watching this podcast. I think be kind to one another. When I think of the women that I've worked with women who have not wanted you to succeed. And I've worked with women who have just wanted to make you bloom and grow, and be one of those. Be one of those women that brings out the best in other women, because sometimes they're a little bit rare. But when they come your way, they make such an impact on your life. I mean, women that genuinely want the best for you.
I've found that my mentor is a woman, and I get that from her as well. She just generally wants the best for me at all times, and that reflects on who I am every day. And I couldn't thank her enough.
Yeah.
It's really powerful when you have someone like that.
That real genuineness.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really. And it teaches you that. It passes it on.
Exactly.
You pass it on.
That's what I get from Toby. Honestly, I not only do I gain confidence from him, but damn, do I learn in those moments. And I'm just like, wow, he creates so much awareness without actually talking to you about you. You actually learn from his actions and the way he treats you. And it's so powerful.
What has the most influence in a business success, and why? I'm definitely going to say culture, because I think when you have an incredible culture in an organisation, it attracts great people. And I've seen great people leave great organisations because of the culture. So I think to be obsessive about the culture in an organisation is absolutely not just the number one, because when you have the right culture, then that allows a growth mindset. It allows really open conversations. It brings in great ideas. It brings in diverse thought. There's a way of operating and a framework to a business. And when that goes unchecked, people people just go, well, I may as well not stay here. I'm not listening to, it doesn't matter. It could be a good brand or good business, but this just isn't for me. So I think absolute culture.
I feel like that's really hard the bigger the organisation. I used to work for ANZ, and the culture was just shocking, and I just think it'd be so hard the bigger your business gets to sort of hold on to those values?
I don't.
And you don't think so?
No, I don't. Because I honestly believe that when you have the right group CEO,
Yeah.
then he has the right CEOs.
Yeah.
And then the right CEOs have the right senior leaders. And then those senior leaders are putting the right people in the seats. It often gets, that's when it works and when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's absolutely difficult to achieve. I understand that. But it's all in the types of people it's holding people to account. Again, it's having that difficult conversation when you're seeing those behaviors, and holding people to account is difficult.
Well, I suppose it's hard to do it in, say, a bank, because they're driven by shareholders and their profits and all that sort of thing, and that becomes their core mantra. And I suppose once you've developed that culture, it'd be hard for a new person to come in and then sort of allow that to filter through the whole organization.
You said it before. It would be your leadership team, 110%. You got to have those people that are you've talked about it a lot today, and it's like that are just everybody's leaning into each other, and they're kind of giving that energy, and they're willing to have those harder conversations. They're willing to, proclaim those values and make sure that they're being upheld and these kind of things. Whereas, and you also said this before, is it only takes one individual who might not be holding those values and kind of living by those values, and that can just filter down into a certain sector of the business, and it only takes one sector of a business to tear it down.
Yeah. And I've been in businesses where the culture has been strong, and even the young designers have gone, hang on a minute, why is that person behaving like that, and why can that person get away with it and we can't? And so all of a sudden it really, you can see when the culture of those values and behaviors aren't being adhered to. And it's interesting how the call out is sometimes at those younger levels of the business. But it is it very much is when you've got that right leadership team, and of course you allow for differences in personalities. This isn't about a personality conversation, because everyone is so different in the way that they are, but it's just more about how they behave and how they and their actions in the organisation. A great leader. I think a great leader, 3 words to describe a great leader. I think that a great leader has to be visionary, first and foremost. You've got to believe in the vision of the organisation. I think that a great leader needs to have the ability to listen, really listen to the organisation, and to allow a person to speak. And I think a great leader, when they allow that person to speak, I'm going to say a great leader. There are so many words I could use, so I'm just very mindful of the only 3 words. But they're very, I'm going to say, but it's particularly I'm going to say probably at my level, is that they are very much there as a great support and empowerment. So I just know that if there's a really strong vision, articulation of that, and that you feel incredible support around you and empowerment, and you've got somebody that's willing to listen and be open, and to be inquisitive. Now I'm using more than 3 words.
That's fine.
But to really be inquisitive and not to be closed, and not to, it's their way or the highway. But really that person who's very personable, that you can talk to. I think that's their great leadership qualities.
Well, they keep you accountable, don't they? And even the questions that you were asking before about all the different issues that you have within the organisation, I think that is such a powerful tool to have. continually asking questions of how we can improve, how we can facilitate our employees, and how we can do better for our customers as well.
Yeah, I think that, great leaders have great whys,
Yeah.
as in the why.
Yeah.
They're very good at that. They're very purpose-driven.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the future of fashion, I think that we've got an incredible industry. I'm glad that we're not overseas. I'm glad that we're in this country. And I think that I think it's going to be interesting from a design student perspective with what's going on with universities, how the universities have had to pivot, where it's more around online learning. So I think it's just going to be interesting to watch the new, up and coming designers with what happens. I suppose with a very different learning environment, because it's been very much, and historically it's been very much around face-to-face, coming into business, working with business, whereas today they're working in a very different way. So I think that that's just going to be an interesting one to watch. But I think that we've got a great industry, and I think that if anything, we're going to be held to account. And so I think with what's in store for the future of fashion, we're going to be held to account. We're going to have to really consider circularity with the way that we're reusing materials. So I think there's going to be great innovation coming through with reusing of materials and cutting materials down, and how we can recreate garments with different types of materials and repurposing. So I think it's going to be more technology based and even industrial design based when we're looking at homewares. But I think that there's going to be a lot more responsible and accountable and still inspirational, but our inspiration is going to come with a lot more consideration.
Fantastic.
Last question.
Don't worry so much around what everyone else thinks. Just don't worry what everybody else thinks. Because guess what? Those everyone else's are just not going to be there at the end of your journey or throughout your journey. They're going to be lucky to be there for 2 years of your journey and not forever. So just don't worry what everybody else thinks. Just keep on your track.
Run your own race.
Run your own race.
Yeah.
Run your own race, believe in yourself, and just have the right people around you giving that advice. But just run your own race. Love what you do.
Fantastic.
Love what you do.
Amazing. We're going to wrap it up there. I want to say a massive thank you to you.
Thank you, Elle.
That was such a great conversation. I learned a lot. I know that you would have too. We know that obviously you're very busy as well, so we just really appreciate your time. And I'm sure the listeners are going to have a wonderful time listening to this as well. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on again.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, there's many. There was a few in the end, wasn't there? For everyone listening, we really hope you enjoyed the episode. And just remember to hit the subscribe button as well. So it's your support that allows us to continue to have these great conversations with amazing people. And we will see you next week.